Shane, everyone here on the Ohio Sports Zone staff has recovered from a boisterous homecoming weekend.
That's right, folks, and when we come back, we will have some football,
some halftime action,
some women's volleyball, and some Ohio hockey next on Ohio Sports Zone.
Welcome back, everyone, on Ohio Sports Zone. Shane, a 26-23 loss on the gridiron for our boys in green and white to Central Michigan. Shane, this was the 25th time in 30 meetings that the Bobcats fell to the Chippewas. Quite simply, what the hell happened?
Yeah, the Chippewas are Ohio's kryptonite. Haven't beat the Central Michigan Chippewas in Peden Stadium since 2000, and they didn't get it done here again this weekend. A 26-23 heartbreaking loss for the Bobcats in moving their chances toward a MAC championship bid. It's got to hurt. That second loss never feels good, and we're just going to jump right in it. Nate Rourke, not his typical self this week. Prior to play against the Chippewas, he had yet to turn over the ball. This week he has 4, a pick and 3 fumbles, and that really set the tone for Central Michigan to get back in this game and grab a lead and hold on to it. Nate Rourke got things started for the Bobcats on a 1-yard rushing touchdown to put Ohio up 7-0 early on. Central Michigan would answer on a 16-yard touchdown pass from Shane Morris to Ty Conklin, not your former NHL goaltender Ty Conklin, that wide receiver for the Central Michigan Chippewas. Yep. But a big play there for Morris. Rourke would start the second quarter off much like he did the first, another 14-yard rushing touchdown for number 12, 14-7 Bobcats, but a 60-yard punt block returned for a touchdown by Sean Bunting put the Central Michigan Chippewas within 1 at the half, and we had a very tight game heading into the third quarter. Ohio would fall 19-14 early in the third on a 1-yard run from Jonathan Ward, and Central Michigan would tack on another touchdown to take a 26-14 lead. Not enough for Ohio to come back in the fourth quarter. A safety by Tyler Gullett and another rushing touchdown by Nate Rourke put it to 26-23, but the Fat Lady sang just a bit too early for Frank Solich and the Bobcats.
Definitely a tough loss. Certainly not going to see Ohio in the Cotton Bowl or anything like that. Not going to be able to run the table and end up 11-1 with that loss. Moving on, Ohio still controls their own destiny in the MidAmerican Conference. Could still end up in Detroit very well. It's a very strong possibility. Very winnable game this week against Bowling Green State University. Going on the road, Shane, this is a Bowling Green team that is 1-5, coming off a crazy play to win the game last weekend. Linebacker Brandon Harris recovered a Miami fumble and took it 93 yards to the end zone and led the Bowling Green Falcons to a victory. Shane, what should we look for this weekend going on the road?
Bowling Green 1-5 just got their first victory this past week against a Miami team that is underachieving through the first 6 games. So you don't really want to take it with too much of a grain of salt if you're Ohio. This is a Miami team, like we said, that didn't really play up to expectations. Bowling Green's not that good, and their record indicates it. So Ohio should have a market advantage on paper at least, but we've seen these things kind of play out in different scenarios. We said the same about them against Central Michigan last week, albeit they've had a poor track record against the Chippewas, but that was a game that Ohio probably should have won as well. So never in the bag, but you got to like their chances. Bowling Green really just poor strength of schedule, 114th out of 130 teams. Don't play a lot of good teams, and they still don't get wins. So that says a lot about their program. James Morgan is a very inconsistent passer at the helm for the Falcons, only completing about 46% of his passes this season. So, that inconsistency at the quarterback position is really going to lend itself to the Bobcats' defense and guys like Evan Crouch and guys like Quentin Poling and guys like Chad Moore to feed off of that sophomore quarterback's kind of malfunctions if you will. So I like what Ohio's been able to do through the first 6 games. Obviously, they've had a couple slip-ups here and there, but overall the package has been good. If Nathan Rourke can get back to his winning ways and he can find some more consistency on the ground, keep that ball in his hands, Ohio's going to have a good day on Saturday against the Falcons.
Yeah, we talk about how Ohio dropped that game to Central last week. This has suddenly become a big game in the MAC East for Ohio, and Bowling Green for that matter. Both teams are 1-1. Akron's 2-0, believe it or not, leading the MAC
Zip
East
Nation
right now. Yep, Zippy the Zip, everyone all happy up there in Northeast Ohio. This is a big game for Ohio's secondary. Brad Ellis is 3rd in the country in passes defended per game. And let's not forget about the special teams either. Louis Zervos, absolute stud. Michael Farkas had 2 punts inside the 20 again last week. That is the 4th time this season that he has done that. Shane, I'm thinking if you're an Ohio Bobcats fan, you're not hitting the panic button yet. You know, they can usually afford to lose a game or 2 in the MAC, but if they lose this game, I think it's time to smash that panic button. Would you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. 4-3, that's no good spot for the Bobcats to be in. 5-2 sounds much better. And this is a team that clicks on offense, albeit they don't play, the toughest opponents in the country, but 23rd in the country in points per game at 38.3 points a game for the Bobcats. So they like to get the ball in their hands and they like to run it down the field. I think you're going to see more of the same this week against a Bowling Green defense that allows about 34 points a game, in the lower echelon of teams there in the nation. So you don't want to see Ohio become complacent, but at that same time, you think that they can do things their way and get the job done.
Certainly a big weekend coming up on the football field. Coming up next, we're going to take you around the MAC. We'll be right back. It's Ohio Sports Zone. Welcome back on Ohio Sports Zone. Ethan Graham, Rapid Father Shane Dazen with me as always. Shane, absolutely bananas game for the MidAmerican Conference last week. Let's open with it. 71-68, 7 overtimes, Western Michigan over the Buffalo Bulls. Do not adjust your computer screen. 71-68, 7 overtimes. I'll say it once more. Western Michigan moves to 2-0 on the season. Buffalo 1-1. What happened?
Oh man, where do you start? This was a game that was tied 31-all heading into overtime. 77 points scored between the two sides in those 7 overtimes. An absolutely crazy game, and one that, if you're a fan, you're head scratching the entire way, just holding on the edge of your seat. When is this thing going to end? But it finally did for the Western Michigan Broncos, and quarterback John Wassink, 23 of 29 with 5 touchdowns, only 256 yards, and that paled in comparison to Buffalo's Drew Anderson. 597 yards, folks, almost 600 yards through the air, 7 touchdowns, 3 to one of his receivers and another 2 to Anthony Johnson with 11 receptions for 195 yards. So they were getting it going through the air. 3 receivers with 100-plus yards for Buffalo, but they fall on the short end of things. And an absolutely heartbreaking game. Yeah,
and it is a heartbreaker. But before we move on, let me just say something about Buffalo's QB change. They went with Drew Anderson over Tyree Jackson. This is a team that, quite frankly, did not look very good early in the season with Tyree Jackson at the helm, let's be honest. But since Drew Anderson stepped in, this is a team that's been improving week after week. 35 of 61, 597 yards, 7 touchdowns. 7 of them. Unbelievable, Shane. Unbelievable. Moving on. In other Mid-American Conference action, Buffalo will have Northern Illinois at home this week at UB Stadium. Northern Illinois is a more than capable team on defense. They have, in my opinion, the best linebacking core in the Mid-American Conference. Definitely a big test for Buffalo. Buffalo's going to come out fired up. Obviously, devastating loss for them last week. Real quick, do you think Buffalo can get it done and really get some momentum going here in the Mid-American Conference?
Well, they were able to score 68 points against a Western Michigan team. You got to like their chances to put up at least half of that against a Northern Illinois team. I know you referenced that defense, one of the best linebacking cores in the MAC, but if Drew Anderson's able to do even half of what he was able to do last week, they're going to score points. And I think that confidence in his offense, at the very least, has got to be strong for Buffalo. And what they were able to do, 176 rushing yards for the team, and we mentioned what they did through the air. So just an absolutely great day for Buffalo, but they got to fix things on the defensive side. They can't be giving up 71 points again like they did
Yeah,
last week.
yeah,
So
that's-
if they're able to tighten up that defense and keep things rolling on offense, they'll have a chance. But I would favor Northern Illinois, at least in the early going.
Yeah, I mean, if Buffalo can stick around and enter in quarter four, not anything can happen. So I just really look for the Bulls to keep it close in the first half, maybe play to that strategy if they want to stay in that game. 4-1 Toledo, who's 1-0 in the Mid-American Conference, a strong favorite to come out of the MAC, in my opinion, at this point. Going on the road to Central Michigan coming off a big win against Ohio last weekend. Shane, Logan Woodside did not have, a typical Logan Woodside performance his last time out. I think he's going to turn it around against Central Michigan. Central Michigan, a team that has shown they can play well at times, obviously last week, stinking around with Boston College, but has also faltered at times, being taken to triple overtime with Rhode Island earlier this year. I think this is a big game. Has big game all written all over it. Oh, wow.
All over it, yep.
Yep.
Keep going again.
Logan Woodside is going to throw some touchdowns in this game. What do you think?
Yeah, both of these quarterbacks are very conventional. They're pocket passers. Look at Shane Morris, look at Logan Woodside, and you got to like the conventions for both of them, like I said. So Logan Woodside, not his prototypical game last week, only 289 yards. We saw what Shane Morris was able to do against the Bobcats, 2 touchdowns for number 7 there. But I think that the matchup favors Toledo. Obviously, the record does. And I think that the quarterback play out of Logan Woodside, a guy that was near the top, if not at the top, of most college passers last season in terms of yardage, in terms of touchdowns, coming out of that MAC school, that's big news. And this Toledo team, despite an early loss there against a tough Miami team, is rolling on all cylinders. And I think they're going to keep things going. Could be Ohio's stiffest competition here in the MAC this year.
Yes, certainly, and a big game coming up at home later this season. Toledo comes to Peden Stadium. I believe that's one in the middle of the week. That should be a fun game. Last game we're going to talk about before we go to break, a pair of undefeateds squaring off in the MAC. Akron is 3-3, sitting at 2-0 in the MAC. Western Michigan 4-2, sitting at 2-0 in the MAC. Shane, Akron struggles on defense. I'm telling you right now, if you have Joe Wasinick, if you have Jarvion Franklin, if you have any other Western Michigan offensive players, start them in your Mid-American Conference fantasy leagues this week. Western Michigan is going to go off.
Yeah, Javarian Franklin, 176 yards, 3 TDs on 37 carries last week in that Buffalo game. Lethal rusher, and we saw what Wasinick was able to do through the air. If they can get both of those guys rolling and that staunch Western Michigan defense can come back to life, they're going to do good things this week against an Akron team that has kind of overachieved a little bit to this point in the season.
I would agree with you. You never know what is going to happen in the MAC. We're going to take a break, but you stay right where you are. This is Ohio Sports Zone.
Cut.
Welcome back to Ohio Sports Zone. Thanks for sticking with us. Ethan Graham, Shane Dazen here with you, as always. Shane, I understand you have some information about the volleyball and field hockey teams. Can you inform us?
Volleyball did halfway decent this weekend. Split the series against Kent State and Eastern Michigan on Thursday. They took them to the brink, 5 sets, but eventually fell to the Golden Flashes, but rebounded nicely on Saturday, able to pull out another 5-set victory against the Eastern Michigan Eagles, moving Ohio to 4-2 in 5-set matches in 2017. And this one was a dogfight for Ohio, winning the first set 25-23 before falling 26-24 in the second set. And that set the tone for what would be a back and forth matchup between the two squads. Ohio takes that third set 25-19, looks a little bit commanding there in the third set, but Eastern Michigan was able to pull things even there in the fourth at 29-27 victory in the fourth set, and Ohio clinches it with a 15-13 win in the final set. 22 kills for Lizzie Stevens, a double-double for her as well, her 8th double-double, team high this year for the sophomore outside hitter, and added 18 digs along with those 22 kills. Freshman middle blocker Tia Jimerson with her 4th straight double-double, 19 kills and 12 digs, and junior setter Stephanie Ullman nearly recorded a double-double of her own with 13 kills and 9 digs. And that was all set up very nicely by freshman Vera Giacomazzi. 57 assists. We talked about what she was able to do last week with 46. Just improves on those numbers exponentially, adding another 11 there to push her total to 57 against the Eagles. And that was big stuff for the freshman setter there. 18 digs as well for her. and Ohio was able to salvage what looked to be a very rough weekend. We said 5 sets in each match, dog fights, or cat fights, if you will, in between the 2 matches, but setting things up very nicely for what should be another big weekend in the MAC, facing Toledo and Ball State. And that Saturday Ball State's game is going to be a very special one for these Lady Bobcats. It's the Dig Pink match for Ohio, benefiting the Side Out Foundation, which helps to inspire science and hope in the fight against breast cancer. And these girls will be wearing pink jerseys, so watch out for that, Ethan. Ball State 12-7, 4-2 in the MAC, a very tough opponent. Ohio's going to need to bring that fight, that Side Out so willingly inspires Ohio to do against these Ball States.
Yeah, great volleyball action for a great cause. Definitely get on over to the Convo this weekend if you can. You know what's right behind the Convo is Chesterfield. The soccer team has not been there in a while. They won't be there this weekend either. But a 5-0 win over Akron last weekend for Ohio women's soccer. Hannah Jagers had 2 goals. Allie Curry had a goal. Olivia Searcy had a goal. Paige Peppa Anstos had a goal. Everyone was scoring for the Bobcats. This is a team that is now 6-7-1 overall and 3-2-1 in the Mid-American Conference. They will be on the road this Friday, going to Kalamazoo at Western Michigan, who is 4th in the MAC. Grace Laburde leads the Broncos with 4 goals. This is a team Ohio lost to 2-0 last year, so a revenge game for the Cats. Sunday, they'll be going to DeKalb, Illinois, playing Northern Illinois, another revenge game for the Cats. It was a frustrating game for the Cats last year, a 2-1 loss, a game that saw Ohio outshoot Northern, rather. I think it was 12-3. Taylor Sarver scored both goals for the Huskies. But Aaron Rodgers has not always been, the most complimentary of his team over last year and at times this year, but he has been very complimentary of this team this year. Definitely a lot around the soccer culture has changed just in a short year. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the rest of this season. They're still certainly in a great position to make the MAC tournament and make some noise in the postseason, but moving forward next season, definitely an exciting time to be a women's soccer fan.
Yeah, and another team that was around here at Ohio this week was the women's field hockey team playing at Prudence Stadium today, hot off the press, a 3-0 victory at home in their finale against Ball State. And this was senior night for these Lady Bobcats, and we'd like to recognize Megan Silveria, Kennedy Farr, Maria Russell, and Rachel Coe on their incredible careers on the turf for these Fockers. So good stuff for the Lady Bobcats on the turf there today. Their record improves to 4-10 after the win, 2-3 in the MAC. Kennedy Farr scores 2 minutes into the contest. Karen Baker and Maria Russell add goals for the Lady Bobcats, and Alex Pennington saves 3 shots for the shutout. Good stuff there in what has been a kind of disappointing season for the field hockey team, but some positives to look forward to as we move forward in the season.
Yeah, anytime you see 4 seniors leaving campus, it's definitely a hard thing to see, but gotta go explore life outside of Athens. But we're not gonna
luck to you guys.
We're not gonna explore life outside of Athens just quite yet. We have some hockey action coming up this weekend from Ocean Seabird Arena. Stay right here. It's Ohio Sports Zone. Welcome back on Ohio Sports Zone. So good to see you. Thanks for staying with us. Shane, a tough pair of losses for Ohio University last weekend to the Jamestown Jimmies, a rare sweep Ohio was faced with at home. Coming up, an emotional series with UNLV this weekend. Shane, UNLV is a team that can score a ton of goals, score goals in avalanches, snowstorms. What should we look for this weekend?
Yeah, before we actually talk about the on-ice product for the Rebels, we would like to mention that assistant coach Nick Robone is recovering well from his injury sustained in the shooting in Las Vegas last week. So that is a very positive note for UNLV and for Ohio's hockey community as
Absolutely.
well. Best wishes to Coach Robone as he makes a speedy and safe recovery. But as we talk about his team, this is a UNLV Rebel team that is making marks in the early going. 5-1 to start the season, including an 8-0 victory last Friday against the University of Utah, and then another 10-6 victory on Saturday to push their record to 5-1. For comparables, they were able to split last weekend, the weekend before Utah against Colorado University, getting shut out 3-0 on Friday night before coming back 3-2 on Saturday. Ohio played Colorado last year, was able to sweep them here at home. Not as difficult of a matchup as Ohio was expecting, although Colorado was ranked in the top 10 for a number of weeks during the regular season last week, so not a team to sniff away by any means. But UNLV, as we said, is an up-and-coming hockey market. You look at what the Vegas Golden Knights have brought to Vegas, and you see that extension in college hockey as well. Fans are engaged, and they're rooting on this team, and the team is repaying them with victories here. So Ohio is going to have its hands full again this weekend. Like we mentioned, a sweep last weekend to the hands of the Jamestown Jimmies, 3-2 on Friday night, and then 3-1 on Saturday. So, not what the doctor ordered for Coach Hogan and the Bobcats, though they did play a very good game both nights. Outshot the Jimmies 47-20 on Friday.
Yep.
And I think the number was very similar again
Yeah, it was
on Saturday
significant.
too. So Ohio really was able to get to its game after a rough first period on Friday night. We saw the Jimmies strike first. Tyler Chavez-Leach with 2 goals for Jamestown and kind of anchoring their team to that 3-2 victory. Gianni Evangelista scored a power play goal there in the third to make it 3-2 after Jamestown led 3-1. But Tyler Harkins had the would-be tying goal taken away from him on a goaltender interference play. Ohio was not able to find the back of the net before time ran out on them. So tough loss there Friday. Like we said, another tough loss there Saturday. But you like to think that Coach Hogan and this team are experienced enough to rebound against an up-and-coming program like UNLV. Ohio's got the edge in experience. They've got the edge in talent. Look at what they were able to do last year and running all the way to the national championship.
Yeah.
These guys, are no, sniff. So it's going to be a good game all the way around. I wouldn't be surprised if this was another, tough weekend. UNLV might come in here and sneak out a victory. It really just depends on Jimmy Thomas being the stalwart in net that he has been for the Bobcats. If he can keep up his solid play in the pipes, UNLV is going to have a tough time finding the back of the net.
Yeah, Jimmy Thomas, you look at the 3 goals both games, but still, played some good hockey last weekend. Certainly, Shane, something that was an issue last weekend for Ohio was their power play, was their penalty kill. Their power play, they really weren't getting a lot of pucks on net, maybe even being too passive at times in the penalty kill. 2 goals in the Friday game really did them in there. In my opinion, I think both sides of the special teams have looked a lot better at practice this week. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, you look at guys like Tyler Harkins getting out there early to work on the little things that come with that power play
Kid loves
and
hockey.
That penalty kill. He's an energizer bunny. Let me tell you, this kid does not stop moving. He's always buzzing around the ice. He's always looking for that extra edge. And I think that Ohio really embodies that well. Coach Hogan making sure that his guys can stay out there for another few minutes if they want to work on some things or come out a little bit early. And after a tough weekend against Jamestown, they're going to need that extra effort if they want to push ahead and kind of forget about those 2 losses. So I think it really does begin with that extra effort, and Ohio has really done a good job this week in practice, working on the little things, making sure that their power play is sound. We saw them running through drills today as we went at practice. Odd man situations, 3-on-2s, 2-on-1 developments, 1-on-1 goaltender work, and they're in the shootout. So a little bit of everything for Coach Hogan. He's going to make sure that these guys have seen it all before they run up against a tough Rebel team.
Shane, one player from Ohio to watch this weekend.
Gianni Evangelista, 6 goals in the early going. He's an absolute weapon on the Bobcats power play. We saw that snipe from the top of the circle there on Friday night, an absolute beauty of a goal. And this guy has really taken the bull by the horns in terms of leadership this year. We talked about what he was able to do last year, second in team in points with 32 in the regular season. He's only added on to that in the early going. A big weapon for Ohio and somebody that Coach Hogan can use interchangeably throughout the lineup, on the PK, on the power play, on the first line, on the second line, on the third line. Doesn't matter where you put him, sure. He produces. Another guy like Brian Lubin, great weekend last week for number 10, especially in the face-off dot on the first line. I think that played huge dividends. Didn't do very well in the first period, but after that first period on Friday night against Jamestown, this guy was winning every single draw for the Bobcats. So I think that really starts with puck possession and Brian Lubin up top, but Gianni Evangelista on that second line with Rudin and Harkins is a lethal second pairing.
Certainly should be an emotionally charged weekend of games here at Osai and Seabird Arena. Assistant coach Nick Rabone unfortunately told me that he will not be able to make the trip this weekend, but Coach, we are thinking of you, and anyone watching this, we will put a link to a charity that Nick would like you guys to make donations to if you're able to in the description. But we're thinking of you. We're thinking of everyone impacted by the Las Vegas shootings here on Ohio Sports Zone. Everyone have a great weekend. For Shame Days, and I'm Ethan Graham. This is Ohio Sports Zone.